Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. I am so glad you are here with us today because we are tackling a subject that I think is going to resonate deeply. In fact, for many of you listening, this might feel a little bit like we're reading your mind.
Or maybe, yeah, reading that diary entry you wrote after a particularly frustrating Tuesday afternoon.
A very, very frustrating Tuesday. It's one of those topics, that sits right at the dead center of the modern work experience.
It really does. It's something everyone feels. It's just in the air we breathe in the office or, on Slack these days. But maybe we haven't quite put the right words to it yet.
Exactly. So to kick things off, I want to start with a phrase. It's more than a phrase, really. It's a mantra. It's a slogan. It's something I guarantee you have heard in a town hall meeting
Oh, for sure.
or seen in a generic motivational email from corporate or, and this is the worst case scenario, had a manager say directly to your face when you asked for, say, a budget increase.
I think we all know where this is going.
The phrase is doing more with less.
Ah, yes. The
Yeah.
golden rule. The ultimate corporate commandment of the 21st century. It's become the background radiation of business. You can't escape it.
You really can't. And usually when we hear it, it is framed in a very specific, very positive light. It's pitched as a challenge, right? It's a call to adventure.
Totally. It's like, hey, team, the economy's rough. The budget is cut. We lost 3 people to attrition and can't backfill them.
But we are going to band together, we are going to be scrappy, and we are going to crush it anyway.
It's the hero's journey, but for spreadsheets.
It is absolutely framed as a badge of honor. That's the seduction of it, and that is why it is so effective. If you can do more with less, you're not just a good employee, you're virtuous. You're efficient. You're an innovator.
You're a rock star.
You're a rock star, a ninja, whatever the term of the day is. It is the ultimate compliment in the modern workplace to be called resourceful. It really is. And it works on us, I think, because we want to be the hero. We want to be the MacGyver of the office, fixing the broken server with a paper clip and some chewing gum. We want to save the day.
Of course. It appeals to our professional pride and our desire to be seen as competent and useful. But that is exactly why the source material we are looking at today is so provocative.
How so?
Because it takes that badge of honor, that sense of heroism, and it just rips it right off your shirt. It calls the whole thing into question.
It does not pull any punches. Today, we are diving deep into a text titled The Myth of Resourceful Exploitation. And specifically, we're looking at a segment from the QofeBreak series, number 16 to be exact, which is very bluntly titled, The Lie of Doing More with Less.
The lie. It's a strong opening. It doesn't leave much room for ambiguity, does it?
It certainly doesn't. And the central argument here is that this entire concept, this mantra we have all just sort of accepted as normal, is fundamentally deceptive.
Deceptive in what way?
The source argues that doing more with less is rarely about actual innovation or efficiency. It argues that it is usually a cover story.
Okay, a cover story for what?
For what the source describes as quiet erosion.
Quiet erosion.
Yeah.
That is such a specific and almost haunting image. It doesn't say collapse. It doesn't say explosion. It says erosion, something that happens over a long, long time.
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We are going to explore this myth of resourceful exploitation. We are going to look at the mechanics of it, the actual systems thinking behind it.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people feel this erosion in their gut or, in their lower back when they wake up in the morning, but they don't have the technical language for it.
That is the goal today, to give language to that experience, to look at the inputs and the outputs of the system and see where the math just completely breaks down.
Right. And before we really get into the heavy lifting, I want to clarify the tone here. This isn't a rant. We aren't here to just complain about the man or be negative about work in general.
No, absolutely not. Work is good. Meaningful work is essential. Challenge is good. Solving difficult problems is one of the most satisfying things a person can do.
Exactly. And this definitely isn't a motivational speech about how you just need to buy a better planner or wake up at 4 a.m. to handle the workload.
No hustle culture tips here.
None. We are here to critically examine what actually happens mechanically, systemically, when resources shrink, but expectations remain totally static or even go up.
Precisely. We're looking at the physics of the workplace. We're looking at cause and effect, not character judgments.
So, listener, I want to talk directly to you for a second. If you are sitting there right now, maybe you're on your commute, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're hiding in a break room, and you feel stretched thin.
Constantly stretched thin.
If you feel like you are constantly sprinting just to stay in the same place, and if you have been told that this pressure is just part of the job or that you need to be more resilient, then this episode is for you.
We want to validate that feeling. We want to show you that the fatigue you are feeling isn't some kind of personal failure. It's a systemic inevitability. It is the math of the situation playing out exactly as it was designed to.
So let's jump into the source material. The myth of resourceful exploitation. The text opens with a definition that really sets the stage. It says, doing more with less is praised as efficiency. Most of the time, it's just quiet erosion.
There's that phrase again.
I want to stay on this concept of quiet erosion for a bit. Why quiet? Why is that distinction so important? What does that word do?
Well, think about the difference between, say, a car crash and rust.
Okay.
A car crash is loud, it's violent, it's immediate.
Right.
Metal crunches, glass shatters, sirens wail. Everyone turns their head. Everyone knows something went wrong. The feedback loop is instant and undeniable.
It's undeniable. You can't ignore a car crash. You can't pretend it didn't happen and just keep driving.
Exactly. But erosion, rust, it's silent. It happens slowly, day by day, hour by hour. You don't notice on a Tuesday that the metal is slightly weaker than it was on Monday. The structure still looks the same from the outside.
The paint might even still be shiny.
The paint is perfect. But underneath, the molecular bond is breaking down. The integrity is being compromised, bit by tiny bit.
So in a workplace context, what does a loud failure look like? The car crash equivalent.
A loud failure is the server room catching fire. It's a massive data breach that hits the news. It's a product recall that costs millions. It's a team walking out en masse on a Monday morning.
Missing a deadline so badly that the stock price tanks.
Those are loud failures. And here is the thing about loud failures. Companies react to them. They have to.
Right. It's an emergency. You call the fire department. You hire consultants. You fix it. The budget that wasn't there last week magically appears when there is a fire.
Always. But doing more with less creates this quiet failure. The deadlines are, for the most part, still being met. The reports are still being filed. The product is still shipping, maybe with a few more bugs, but it's shipping.
So management looks at the dashboard, at all their KPIs, and all the lights are green.
Everything is green. The numbers look good. In fact, the numbers look better because costs are down. But the foundation, the people, the processes, the code quality, the customer relationships, the morale is eroding. It's getting thinner and weaker.
And the source argues that this quietness is precisely why it's so dangerous.
It is the most dangerous part.
Yeah.
Because by the time you hear the noise, by the time the failure becomes loud, the bridge has already collapsed. It's too late.
That is genuinely terrifying because it means the feedback loop is completely broken. If the signal of we are in trouble is being suppressed by people working harder and longer to cover the cracks, the system never learns that it's under-resourced. It just learns that it can demand more.
Precisely. The silence is the danger. If the erosion was loud, we would stop it. But because it looks like business as usual, it is allowed to continue until the catastrophe happens. And then everyone acts surprised.
How could this have happened? Everything was going so well.
Our numbers were great.
And that leads us perfectly to the idea of the mask. The source talks about how this concept is publicly praised as efficiency. We need to really drill down into the difference between actual efficiency and this imposter efficiency.
This is such a critical distinction because efficiency is one of those bulletproof words in corporate life, isn't it?
Oh.
If I say I want to be efficient, you can't really say, no, I prefer we be wasteful and slow.
Right. It's a trump card. You win the argument by default. It sounds objective. It sounds mathematical. It sounds good.
It is, but let's look at the mechanics of it. What is real efficiency? Actual efficiency usually involves an investment of some kind. It involves better design. For example, if I buy a dishwasher, I can do the dishes more efficiently than if I wash them by hand.
Right.
I am using a tool, an investment of capital, to reduce the human energy required to achieve the same outcome. Or I rearrange my kitchen so I don't have to walk as far. That's a process improvement.
Okay. So better tools, better software, streamlined processes, that's real efficiency. You change the how, you make the process smoother, you reduce friction, so the same amount of effort yields a better result.
Yes, that's smart efficiency. It's like putting oil in the engine. It makes everything run better. But the doing more with less mantra rarely comes with a budget for a new dishwasher.
No, it usually comes with a mandate to just wash the dishes faster. By hand.
Right.
With colder water.
And by the way, we've fired the person who dries the dishes, so now you have to wash and dry them in the same amount of time. Be efficient.
That's it. That's the perfect summary.
And that is not efficiency. That is intensification. That is just squeezing the sponge harder and hoping more water comes out. The source identifies this as the illusion of efficiency.
The illusion of efficiency.
It looks like efficiency on a spreadsheet because the cost of the dish dryer went down and the output, clean dishes, stayed the same. But mechanically, it's a completely different process. One is optimization. The other, as the source argues, is exploitation.
In this phrase, doing more with less, the source says it acts as a justification mechanism. It's a rhetorical tool organizations use to rationalize things that, if you said them plainly, would sound completely irrational.
Yes. It justifies understaffing. It justifies overload. It justifies lowered standards. Think about it. If a manager says, we are critically understaffed, that sounds like a problem they need to fix.
It sounds like a failure on their part, a failure of planning or recruiting.
Exactly. It's an admission of a problem. But if they say, we are a lean, agile team that does more with less, suddenly it sounds like a strategy. It sounds intentional.
It spins the negative into a positive. It's a brilliant, if cynical, rebranding exercise.
It reframes the deficit. It makes the lack of resources seem like a core tenet of your high-performance culture rather than an accident or, negligence.
And here is where it gets really personal and honestly a little insidious. The source mentions that this erosion is often disguised as resilience.
Resilience. That word, I feel like 5 or 10 years ago, resilience was a good word. It meant bouncing back from a genuine tragedy. It was a stoic virtue. It was about inner strength.
I agree. Now, in the corporate lexicon, it feels like it's been weaponized.
It has absolutely been weaponized. And the source points this out beautifully. When you frame the ability to absorb this constant systemic pressure, this erosion as resilience, you make it about the individual's character.
Right. This is the psychological trap. This is where it gets really sticky.
Because if you are struggling to do the work of 3 people, the narrative isn't, the company has failed to resource this team properly.
No.
The narrative becomes, you are not resilient enough.
You can't hack it.
Yeah.
You're not put out for this fast-paced environment. You need a better mindset.
We need rock stars here, and maybe you're just not a rock star.
Have you tried mindfulness?
Exactly. It shifts the locus of control and, more importantly, the locus of blame. It protects the system from criticism by pointing the finger at the person who is suffering most from the system's broken design.
It tells you that if you just did a little more yoga, or managed your calendar better, or had more grit, then the impossible math would somehow work out.
But the math doesn't work, and it can't. No amount of yoga changes the number of hours in a day. No amount of meditation makes 3 people's workload magically fit into one person's schedule without something breaking.
And that is the perfect segue to our next section. The source calls it the impossible math. Or rather, we are calling it that, based on the source's analysis of the equation at the heart of this.
Let's really look at this equation, because when you strip away all the buzzwords and the corporate jargon, business is largely about math. It's inputs and outputs.
It is. So let's look at the inputs first. The source is very specific about what is being taken away in these scenarios. It lists a few key things.
It's not just money, which is the obvious one.
Right. It's less time, which is often a result of fewer people. It's less support, so fewer admins, less IT help, less training. And this is the one I really want to highlight. Less margin.
Margin. Let's spend a minute on margin. Because to a certain kind of manager, margin sounds like a luxury. It sounds like extra. It sounds like fat.
And in a budget cut, the extra is the first thing to go. It seems logical to cut the fat, to be lean.
That is exactly how it is viewed by the efficiency experts. They see margin as waste. If you aren't typing 60 minutes out of every hour, if your CPU utilization isn't at 99%, that's waste.
Why are you staring out the window? Get back to work, optimize every second, eliminate the downtime.
But the source, and frankly any systems engineer, any ecologist, will tell you that margin is absolutely essential to a functioning system. Margin is not waste. Margin is the buffer.
The buffer for what?
It's the buffer for everything. Margin is the space for error. It's the time to fix an unexpected problem without derailing the entire project. It's the capacity to handle a sudden surge in demand. It is the cooling system for the engine.
The cooling system. I like that analogy. An engine needs a radiator. It needs oil.
If you run an engine at 100% RPM, redlining it, without any cooling, without any oil, it might run really, really fast for about 10 minutes.
And then it seizes, it melts, it explodes.
It catastrophically fails. Margin is what allows for sustainability. It's what allows a system to survive the unexpected. Without margin, any small deviation from the plan becomes a full-blown crisis.
And it's not just about preventing explosions, is it? It's not just defensive.
No, not at all. Margin is also where creativity happens. It's where innovation is born. You can't have a brilliant game-changing idea about how to improve the process if you are drowning in the process.
You're too busy just trying to keep your head above water.
You can't innovate when you are in survival mode. Survival mode is pure tunnel vision. Your brain literally shuts down the long-term creative parts to focus on the immediate threat.
That is so true. When I'm completely swamped, I'm not thinking about the 5-year plan. I'm thinking about the next 5 minutes. I'm thinking about how to just survive the next meeting without looking like an idiot.
Exactly. So that's the input side of the equation. It's shrinking. Less time, less support, zero margin. Now let's look at the other side. What about the expectations? What about the demand for output?
The source puts it very simply. Somehow more output.
The expectations do not drop. They don't even stay the same. In fact, they often rise. It's the classic, we need to grow 10% this year, but we are cutting the budget by 20%. Go figure it out.
So we have a gap, a literal mathematical physical gap. Inputs are down, outputs are up. The equation is broken.
And this is where the lie lives. This is the core of the deception. Because the organization pretends that this massive gap is being filled by efficiency or innovation or, synergy.
Magic.
Magic.
Yeah.
But the source tells us what actually fills the gap. It's not magic. It's not some brilliant new process that was just invented.
It has to come from somewhere.
It has to. It's a law of conservation of energy. If the resources aren't paying for the output, who is paying for it? The source lists 3 specific things that fill that void. The first is stress.
Stress, the internal cost.
That is the human energy required to bridge the gap. If you don't have enough time to do the job during the workday, you use your adrenaline, your cortisol, your personal time, your sleep time to get it done.
You're borrowing from your own physical and mental health reserves.
The company is literally extracting that energy from your biology to balance their spreadsheet. They are externalizing their operational cost onto your nervous system.
Man, when you put it that way, extracting energy from your biology, it sounds like something out of a sci-fi dystopia, like we're just batteries in pods.
In a system of resourceful exploitation, that is effectively what is happening. The company is saving money by spending your health. The second filler the source identifies is shortcuts.
Shortcuts. Now, this connects right back to the quiet erosion idea, doesn't it?
Directly. It's the physical manifestation of the erosion. When you force a more with less mandate, people don't just magically work faster or smarter. They're forced to compromise.
But they can't show the compromise.
They can't. Because that would be admitting failure. It would prove that you're not resilient enough. So they are forced to make invisible compromises.
Give me an example of an invisible compromise. What does that look like in practice?
Okay, let's say you are a software developer. You're given a task to ship a new feature in 2 weeks. But you and your team know that to do it right, to make it secure, stable, and maintainable, you really need 4 weeks.
A common scenario.
You can't change the deadline. So what do? You write the code, it works, the button clicks, the feature ships. But to get it done, you skip writing the documentation, you skip writing the automated tests, you skip the refactoring that makes the code clean and easy to update later.
So on the surface, to the customer, to management, the feature is there, it looks like it works, everyone is happy, the deadline was met.
Yes, the output looks the same, but underneath, you have created a huge amount of technical debt. You have eroded the quality of the code base. The next time anyone tries to touch that code, it will be a tangled, brittle mess. It will break in unexpected ways.
It's a time bomb.
It is a time bomb hidden in the foundation of the product, or if you're in customer service.
What's the shortcut there?
You get your average call time down to 2 minutes to meet the new efficiency quota. Amazing.
Yeah.
But you didn't actually solve the customer's problem in a deep, lasting way. You just gave them a Band-Aid solution to get them off the phone.
So they'll call back in a week, probably angrier than before.
Exactly. And they'll probably tell their friends how bad your service is. The shortcut solves the immediate metric, the average handle time, but creates a long-term, much bigger problem in customer churn and reputation damage. It's borrowing from the future to pay for the present.
The source calls these the hidden costs to the work quality. And that brings us to the third filler in the gap, the most devastating one.
Burnout.
Burnout.
This is the long-term cost to the workforce itself. And the source frames this as the inevitable result of the first two. If you run on a constant drip of stress hormones and are forced to take shortcuts that go against your professional judgment for long enough, the human machine breaks down.
And burnout is not just, I'm tired. It's not a bad week. It's a deep physiological state of exhaustion and cynicism. It's when you just can't anymore.
It is the total collapse of your internal resources.
Yeah.
You've paid out all the energy you borrowed from your health, and your account is empty. So to recap the equation, the gap between less resources and more output isn't filled by efficiency. It is filled by the cannibalization of the worker's well-being and the quality of the work.
Cannibalization of the workers, that is a stark image. But it really clarifies the distinction the source makes next, which I think is a good place to go. We need to talk about Section 3, efficiency versus exploitation.
Yes, this is a crucial distinction. We need to be really careful here because we don't want to sound like we are rejecting the idea of hard work entirely. That's not the point.
No, absolutely not. I don't want people listening to think we are saying hard work is bad or that you should never try to be efficient or that all deadlines are evil. The source explicitly says this isn't about avoiding effort or avoiding responsibility.
Correct. We are not advocating for laziness. We're not saying that constraints can't breed creativity. We all know that sometimes having a tight deadline or a limited budget forces you to think outside the box. And that can be good. That can be healthy.
That's the Apollo 13 moment, right? That's the classic example.
Exactly. I love that example. When the CO2 filters were failing on Apollo 13, and they had to figure out how to build a new filter out of a square peg and a round hole, or rather a sock, a flight manual, and some duct tape, that was the ultimate doing more with less.
It was brilliant. It was heroic. Failure is not an option. They saved the astronauts' lives through sheer ingenuity under impossible constraints.
So what's the difference? What's the difference between the heroism of Apollo 13 and the myth of resourceful exploitation we're talking about? Why was that a shining moment of human ingenuity and this is toxic?
I'm guessing it has to do with context, how often it happens.
Exactly. The source points to two things, necessity and duration. In Apollo 13, it was a genuine, unforeseen life or death emergency. It wasn't a strategic choice by NASA to save money on filters from the outset.
It was a crisis, a true crisis.
And second, and this is the absolute key, it was temporary. It was a crisis mode that had a clear beginning and a clear end. The goal was to get back to normal.
Okay, I see where you're going. The source argues that the problem today is that this crisis mode has become normalized.
The crisis mode has become the standard culture. The emergency never ends. Every single week is Apollo 13. Every project has an impossible deadline and not enough resources.
Imagine if, after Apollo 13 landed safely, NASA management held a press conference and said, "Hey, great job, guys. That duct tape filter was amazing. From now on, as a cost-saving measure, we aren't going to buy those expensive CO2 filters anymore."
You guys just build them out of socks and cardboard on every mission. It saves us a fortune on the budget.
That would be completely insane. The astronauts would quit. Or they would die. The program would fail.
It is insane. But that is exactly what happens in the corporate world every single day. A team pulled off a miracle to meet an impossible deadline. They stay late, they work weekends, they skip lunch, they neglect their families, they save the project.
And what's their reward?
Instead of management saying, "Wow, that was a close call, you were all exhausted, let's hire more people and plan better so we never have to do that again," they say, "Great, that's the new benchmark, you've proved it can be done, do it again next quarter, but faster."
It's the punishment for competence. If you prove you can survive the exploitation becomes the new baseline expectation.
Precisely. That is the tipping point the source identifies. Smart efficiency is finding a better way. It's optimizing the workflow so it takes less energy to get the same or better result. Exploitation is removing the necessary tools and time and demanding the same result through sheer brute force of will.
And doing it perpetually, as the new normal.
Perpetual crunch, perpetual lean. It transforms the workforce from a garden that you water and tend to so it can grow into a strip mine that you just dig into until it's empty and then you move on.
Which brings us, inevitably, to the consequence, because mines run dry. Engines blow up. You can't cheat the laws of physics forever.
Section 4, the inevitable consequence. The source is very blunt here. There's no poetry to it. The quote is, "Eventually, something gives."
It's a law of nature. It's entropy. Systems cannot run in a deficit forever. The debt always comes due. Whether it's financial debt, the technical debt we talked about, or, in this case, the physiological and psychological debt of the employees.
And the source identifies what breaks first. And it's interesting, right? Because in a purely mechanical system, you'd think maybe the computers would crash from overload or the machinery would stop working.
But that's not what happens.
No, but the source says it's usually the people.
Why is that? Why did the people break before the system itself breaks?
Because people are the most adaptable. and in some ways the most fragile component in the system. If a server gets overloaded with too many requests, it crashes immediately.
Right.
It doesn't try harder. It doesn't worry about its upcoming performance review. It doesn't feel guilty about letting the team down. It just stops. It has a hard physical limit. It throws an error code and goes to sleep.
But people, we're different.
We have soft limits. We have mortgages to pay. We have fear of getting fired. We have ambition. We have a deep-seated desire to be seen as competent and to help our teammates. We feel loyalty.
So when the pressure mounts, we don't just shut down.
We absorb it. We act as the shock absorbers for the system's fundamental dysfunction. We are the buffer. When the company removes the margin from the system, we become the margin. We stretch, we skip lunch, we work weekends, we internalize the stress.
We are the ones holding the crumbling bridge together with our bare hands.
Until we can't anymore. And that is why the quiet erosion ultimately ends with people breaking. Because they are the ones shielding the organization from the reality of its own bad math. Their breakdown is the first loud signal that the system has failed.
It circles right back to the beginning. The quiet erosion is the gradual wearing down of the human element, the shock absorber, until it finally snaps.
Yes. And when a key employee finally quits or has a heart attack or just checks out mentally, what people now call quiet quitting, the organization is often genuinely shocked. What happened? They were such a rock star.
They were so resilient.
They always delivered. But they weren't resilient. They were being eroded. And eventually, there was nothing left to erode. The mine was empty.
This is, well, it's heavy. It's a lot to process. But I think it's so important to name it, to give it a vocabulary. Because if you don't name it, if you can't see the system, you think it's your fault.
Naming it is the first step to protecting yourself.
Yeah.
You have to see the equation to realize that it's rigged. You can't win a game that's designed for you to lose.
So let's move to the outro. We've unpacked the source. We've looked at the lie, the impossible math, the cost, and the consequences. Let's try to synthesize this for the listener. What are the key insights they should walk away with?
I think we can boil it down to three main pillars. Insight number one. Doing more with less is often a lie. It is a rhetorical device, a piece of corporate language used to frame resource cuts as a virtue. Don't take it at face value. When you hear that phrase, your internal alarm bells should ring. Ask, what is actually being taken away here?
Insight number two. The gap is real. If resources go down and expectations do not, that gap is being filled by something. It's not magic. And that something is usually your stress, your shortcuts, and your future burnout. Those are the invisible subsidies you're paying to keep the company's illusion of efficiency alive.
And insight number three is what we call the resilience trap. Be very, very wary when an organization praises your resilience as a way to avoid fixing their systemic problems. True resilience is being able to recover from a rare crisis. It is not the ability to endure endless systemic abuse without complaining.
So, to the listener, if you are feeling this, if you are feeling bone-tired and stretched to your limit, I hope this deep dive validates you. You aren't crazy. You aren't weak. You aren't failing. You are just trying to solve an impossible equation that was handed to you.
Exactly. And there's a massive difference between being efficient, which is about working smarter, and being exploited, which is about just working harder for less. Know that difference. See it. And guard your margin. Guard it fiercely, because no one else will.
And we want to leave you with one final provocative thought. This is something the source hints at, but I want to push it a bit further. We talked about how the system relies on people breaking as its final feedback mechanism.
Yes. The human canary in the coal mine.
So here's the question for you to mull over. If the success of your organization, the profits, the growth, the stock price, fundamentally relies on the invisible, quiet destruction of the people doing the work, is that actually success? Or is it just a massive, unacknowledged failure of design?
That is the big question. At what point does the long-term cost of repairing broken people, the high turnover, the massive recruitment costs, the retraining, the loss of priceless institutional knowledge, at what point does that bill finally outweigh the short-term savings of doing less?
Because eventually that bill always comes due.
It always does. The only question is who has to pay it, the company that created the problem or the people who are broken by it.
Something to think about this week as you look around your own workplace. Thank you so much for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Take care of yourselves.
We'll see you next time.